Okay, hi everyone. Let's just take a few seconds till people join. Hi, welcome. Welcome into the session. How are you doing? Okay, let's just take a few seconds. Okay, we have the first few people join. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Procurement Tech Trailblazer Panel. We're very happy to have you here today for what's going to be an incredible session. So in this panel, we're going to dive deep into the journeys of our speakers as they have built and transformed procurement functions and overhauled the procurement tech processes. Whether you're starting from scratch or looking to optimize your current process, today's session is going to provide you with great insight and valuable lessons to apply right away. I am very excited to announce our incredible panel. I was so excited for this for such a long time. So let me introduce them, each with a wealth of experience and expertise in procurement. So first we have Ashish Gupta. Ashish is a global procurement leader with a background in procurement, program management, business operations, and R&D. Ashish currently leads the procurement excellence at Clorox. He has wide expertise in technology and CPG industries and work locations spanning from across US, UK, Finland, Singapore, and India. As a thought after speaker at leading forums and conferences, he shares his vision and innovative perspectives on the future of procurement technologies. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us today. Very
Thanks,
happy to
Leda,
have
for
you.
having me here. Looking forward for an exciting panel discussion today.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much. And let me introduce Gilberto Solis Rodriguez. Gilberto is a senior director at Thomson Reuters Global Services Center of Excellence with over a decade of experience in procurement leadership. He has implemented procurement systems and driven digital transformation in manufacturing, financial services, and technology industries. At Thomson Reuters, he led the creation of a cost-effective in-house procurement system using Microsoft Power Platform. He's passionate about continuous improvement and transformation and leverages AI and low-code tools to enhance efficiency and supplier management. Alberto, also thank you very much for joining today. We're all very excited to hear your story.
Thank you for having me, Lara. Appreciate it.
Very happy to have you. And then last but very much not least, we have Pedro Barrocoso. Pedro is a digital procurement and process automation advisor and founder at AccelerIQ, a boutique consultancy helping businesses maximize process and technology value with a human-centric view. Pedro led a Center of Excellence for Digital Innovation in his recent role, and before that, held various roles as a head of procurement processes and tools across CPG, pharma, and energy businesses such as Takeda, Submiller, and Alstom Power. Pedro, thank you much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and really exciting to be here at this panel today. Thank you.
Very happy to have all of you. Just before we dive in, wanted to take a second. This is going to be a very diverse panel. We have three of our speakers with very different perspectives, both with a practitioner perspective, with a consulting perspective. Um, some of you have implemented the systems. Gilberto has built a system himself, so with the support of his team. So I think this is going to be a very diverse discussion that I'm very much looking forward to. Before we dive in, let me take a second to talk about the housekeeping. So for those of you who haven't used this platform before, this is AirMeet. It's a very simple, straightforward platform. On the right-hand side, you can see a few tabs. One of them is the chat window. So I see Adrian already texted there. Please use the chat window to just communicate with other, sorry, to communicate with other participants today. So to introduce yourself, you can go ahead and put a message in the chat. For example, I'm going to say where I'm joining from. So I am joining from Riga in Latvia. So please go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from. I bet this is a very international webinar today as well. Okay. Hi, Vicky. Very happy to see you. Hi, Kristen. Okay, thank you very much. So we all found the chat function. And then right under that, there is the Q&A window. Please go ahead and use that to ask any questions for our speakers. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, but please don't wait with your submissions. We want to make sure that we cover all of the questions today. Okay, we have So many people. We have someone from Egypt. Hello. India, also India. Portugal. Very nice. Very happy to see all of you here. Thank you very much for joining. Wow. Again, as I expected, very international community today. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And then last but not least, before we move forward, let me introduce Precoro. So today's panel is proudly brought to you by Precoro, the procurement tech company that's redefining how teams manage spend. Precoro helps organizations of all sizes. So whether you are a growing team just starting to formalize procurement or a larger business ready to centralize and automate operations. With Precoro, you can simplify purchasing, ensure compliance, gain complete visibility into your procurement activities, all through an intuitive platform that's as powerful as it is user friendly. I might be biased, but I think this is the best of all. We can also discuss that later during the session. So if you're ready to take your procurement processes from chaotic to seamless, I invite you to go ahead and check out Precoro. I'm going to leave the link for it in the chat a little bit later on. But this is it from me. And I think we can go ahead and dive directly into the discussion. There is so much to talk about today. Again, let's dive right in. So I have the first question that I would like to address to Ashish. So you are among top 5% of procurement leaders pursuing pushing the boundaries of technology. And at Clorox, you've implemented cutting edge tools like spend visualization, risk impact analyzers, shaping what procurement innovation looks like. However, for many professionals, the reality is very different. They're still wrestling with foundational challenges like getting clean data. So, how can you bridge that gap? What suggestions would you give to some of those people in our audience?
Thank you, Leda. First of all, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I heard people have joined from India, which is like 10:30 or 10:40 p.m. So thank you for joining so late. Um, I think from my perspective, it's something very important, but that often gets overlooked, which I call a mindset shift. Any journey or any transformation starts with shift in mindset. Let me give you an example. Do you know the most common feature which people ask, even if they are buying $1 million procurement technology solution? And that feature is, can I download into an Excel? I mean, I love Excel, but that's the first feature we ask. But if we shift our mindset, maybe the question could be, can we Excel without Excel? So we often hear you mentioned about, like you asked about clean data. We often hear that we will start something when we will have clean data. You know, but I would suggest to follow a different approach, which I call day one or 1 day concept. Do we want to wait for that perfect day when everything is right and we have so-called clean data? Or should we start from today and starts working towards improving that data? Because if we take action today, we can improve the quality of data or address any other foundational challenges step by step as we move forward. I am truly inspired by high jumpers, and when I observe high jumpers, what I have learned from them, they don't take leap into the air like right away. They take series of steps before they make a high jump, and these steps help them, building the momentum and ensure proper positioning and lead to a successful jump. So in summary, I would suggest, like, don't wait for the D-Day, start from today, and then start taking a small steps, and you will see a progress every day.
Sounds great. If I can ask a follow-up question on that. So we often hear people talk about the three fundamental pillars, let's say. It's the process, people, and tech. A lot of people dive into tech first. Where do you suggest people start? So is this with the people or with the process?
For me, it's always starts with people. It's always starts with people. Any transformation, like I said, mindset, it's about the people transformation. I mean, think about, it's like planting a tree where your technology or process are like seeds, but at the end it's the people who are going to nurture it, who are going to water it, who are going to make it grow. I mean, unless they care, it's not going to thrive. So for me, it starts with people and it ends with people.
Makes sense. And then again, given that you are at the very edge of procurement innovation, you have so many resources, access to so many resources, so many examples of good implementations, not so great implementations. What are some of the lessons that people could apply directly starting their tech journey? So just so that they can ensure that this innovation doesn't just serve a few people. So sometimes these let's say, even the re-innovations of procurement technology, they can serve a few key stakeholders, but not the rest of the organization. So how can you make sure that we avoid that?
So I will share a few personal life, learnings which have a huge impact and which I have applied in my tech journey, starting a tech journey or even leading the tech journey. Uh, my first lesson was when I was learning cooking from my wife, and she taught me that if you want to cook something, you need to face the heat, and if you are able to face the heat, whatever you are cooking is going to be delicious. So my lesson was when you start a journey, the journey itself could be painful, but the end result will be fruitful. But I tried, replicating her recipe, which she often uses, but unfortunately, the result didn't come out to be the same. So I asked her, like, the taste is not same. So she told me something which was very insightful. She said, when you're cooking, you need to think about the people whom you are going to serve. So that was my other lesson. So when you are uh, working on technologies in a very high tech environment, don't forget about the high touch, which is people, which I just described. So it's about people. The second lesson which I will share is, whenever we start this journey, we expect, and which is very natural, that the journey is going to be very smooth, it's straightforward. But the reality is very different. We always see ups and downs. And I always suggest people, whenever you feel that your journey is not smooth, it's going up and down, look at your EKG or ECG report. If it's straight line, that means it's end of life. So it's good to have, up and down, because that means a progress and growth. So let's embrace like highs, ups and downs, and just continue on your transformation. So if I sum it up, like the mindset shift, about people taking small steps, and then just be ready with this ups and downs will help moving towards your journey, and like innovation is spread across the whole organization.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think those are great lessons. And I also think going back to your wife's cooking example, it also takes the right team. So if she cooks it and it tastes great, it just took the right person to make it. So it takes to have a great team for a great, tech implementation
Mhm.
for anything.
Which I am doing even today. So
Sounds good. I wanted to ask a different question to introduce Pedro and a little bit about your story. So you're a unique speaker in this panel in a way that you have both procurement tech transformation experience as a practitioner, and you have the consulting experience. So you worked with a range of different organizations through AccelerIQ. I always struggle with that one. It's a tongue twister. So you've seen the full spectrum of where companies stand in their tech maturity. And I think that's a big discussion because there are those few percent that are lucky and have all of the access to all of the technology, different approaches, etc., etc. But then there is, at least in my perception, big part of the industry that is not there yet. So what do you think, given your breadth and depth of experience, where do we stand as an industry when it comes to tech automation? Are we as advanced as we think we are?
And this is a really good question, right? And you are hinting already at a point, which is we have quite a diversity of different states with regards to the maturity which we have both on the procurement side, so procurement maturity, but then as well on the technology side, because in my view, they have to be seen together. You cannot just pick technology as an indicator. You have to look at it overall. And one thing which I can see from a lot of the conversations I'm having is that there is this understanding that because we've done installation of solutions, we should already be there. We should already be very mature. And some of the reports which you see quite frequently are now talking about the fact that 94% of all companies, they have a source to pay solution. Now, is that a good indication of maturity as well? I wouldn't think so, right? And it isn't either. The number of events which are taking place, like DPW and some of the other conferences, right? That is an indication of a market which is interesting, but is not yet indicating that all of the companies are really seeking now to go to the next level. So in my view, there is actually three distinctive types of companies which are nowadays, showing their maturity. So I can really cut the market in three different phases or three different types of maturity, if you want. Maybe taking the cooking analogy, right? The ones who can cook gourmet meals, right? And are really, really ready now to jump ahead, leap ahead, and as well embrace cutting edge technology because they've done their homework over the years. They have built a solid process foundation. They have standardized processes. They have as well harmonized data. They do have people who are capable to take forward all of these capabilities which are necessary to drive adoption with a good change management in place, right? And these are the narrow percentage companies, the big corporations, sometimes even small corporations, which started off with a very empty sheet and have now built a kind of a landscape which is flexible, adaptable, and very modern, right? Can actually get there too. But that's a narrow percentage of the total market, I would say. And these are the ones usually everyone is talking about, right? Everyone talks about that company who uses autonomous sourcing, or that company which knows exactly how to do automation programs, or this company which has a great procurement user experience, right? In reality, there's a big middle ground, right? These are companies who've done their piece of work around building, let's say, the basic source to pay landscape. They have strategic sourcing solutions. They do have a rec to pay backbone. They potentially have as well started to experiment and pilot as well with AI and automation, but they're not quite sure about being future ready. So they have challenges coming from the procurement side and ambitions from procurement, which they can't satisfy right away with their current technology landscape. And that's leading them to rethink, how is this actually going to help me now to advance, right? So some companies are now in this journey of implementing S4, for instance, and at the same time, they're asking themselves this question, whether or not the source to pay backbone they have is really going to be the right thing, or if they would rather choose a best of breed and suite approach, so a mix of technologies as well, in order to be able to support the goals which the organization is moving forward with regards to sustainability, supplier collaboration, risk management, but then as well creating that visibility on spend, right? And the third camp, and these are, so we talked before about gourmet. I think the middle camp would be more the people who can cook, but a narrow menu, right, Ashish? And the last one is maybe the guys who need to go to the takeaway, right? These are the people who haven't yet really established a mature procurement function. It's maybe still a function which is very transactional. It's potentially as well a group of organizations where getting out of legacy is difficult. And there is still, let's say, a lot of groundwork to do, not just on the target operating model, but then as well on the process side, on the people side, and as well on the data side, right? And these are the people we need to help, by showcasing as well what's possible and helping them as well then to move forward and as well with progress, right? So from a perspective of where we are overall in this market, I think we're seeing these light tower companies who are leading the pack. They're giving us kind of a direction, but overall, we still have this modernization ongoing in the current landscapes within procurement technology, where people are trying at the same time to fix the foundational issues they have and renovate the roof, right? So two things at the same time, which needs to happen nevertheless, right?
Well, it's definitely a very interesting market to be in, very interesting state to be in. What do you think is keeping those people that should go to takeaway, that have to go to takeaway, from actually learning some basic cooking skills? So is it, 20 years, 40 years ago, we could say it's lack of information or lack of availability of solutions, courses, et cetera, et cetera. That's plentiful now. There's such a wealth of information out there. What is the problem? What's the challenge?
Yeah, and just the points you were mentioning, it cannot be that we have a lack of knowledge and information because that's all available. We have fantastic podcasts, we have a lot of LinkedIn and social media content, which is kind of sharing as well perspectives on how you can actually modernize your technology landscape. So that is not the case. What could be holding back people is their specific mandate they have within procurement and the position procurement takes as well into influencing their own journey and as well the capabilities they need in order to move forward, right? So that maybe is one of the aspects.
Mm.
The other one I was just mentioning earlier is the legacy environment they're sitting in. So breaking out of a very rigid strategy around technologies, right? And this is where many times, it's not about necessarily replacing things you have. It's many times as well connecting the right things with some new infused levers. For instance, I think I don't know, Gilberto, if you're going to talk about low code and Power Automate, right? Building on top of what you have, capabilities which help you to infuse and modernize these very rigid structures you potentially have, right? So that could as well be one of the lead factors. The third item is as well about I think the capabilities of people to truly move forward with these tools, right? Regardless of the type of cooking style I was just talking about, adoption still is a massive lever, right? And what we're seeing right now, and this is where I've had a lot of conversations lately, is as well questions about how do I increase adoption of what I'm currently doing best. And that could be a combination between obviously change management activities, business enablement with a shared service center supporting, but then as well modernizing through infusion as well what you currently have so that it becomes a better user experience for a lot of the users out there in the divisions and functions, right?
Yeah, I this might be a controversial take. This is my personal take. But I think the best way to increase adoption is to make sure you have the right tech for the right process. Because if you have reviewed the process, as Gilberto is going to talk about, that's probably my favorite story. But if you have done the groundwork, if you have reviewed, what sort of process you should have, what would be the most helpful to all of the stakeholders, and then you implement the thing that can do that, I think that's going to be, that's the best you can do. Of course, if people are resistant, if they don't want to learn it, that's a whole different story. But I think that's the first step. Okay, and then I would like to introduce Gilberto as well. I think I am very excited about your story. We had a great call before. So, Gilberto at Thomson Reuters, you developed a cost-effective in-house procurement system. So you didn't just go out and purchase something, and that is quite rare. Um, Usually comes with the perception that that costs a lot of money, requires lots of resource, but you've proven that you can do that cost effectively and create something that's going to suit your process perfectly and work within your current system, again, as we talked, on the basis of Microsoft. So can you tell a little bit more about that process and the lessons you have gained from that experience?
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm glad to share my experience. Thank you for having me here. Um, yeah, we're not that different than any other companies, right? With some legacy system, with some procurement technology depth, right, over the years, right? Um, so there are a couple of situations that push us to basically get out of the traditional approach of going out to the market and just look for opportunities and tools, right? We have a strict change program that happened over the past 3 years where we have reduced budgets, right, in general for the entire company to go and acquire extra software. The nature of the business of Thomson Reuters is basically information, right? That we are basically providing advice, information to accounting and legal professionals. And on top of that, we have our Reuters news agency, right? So our main commodity in our case is software development, software maintenance, right? And we are in the technology industry basically, which is being pushed by the AI, right? So the conditions of the market plus our internal change program basically put us in a situation where we needed first good pace to deliver to stakeholders. We needed flexibility to adapt to the changing environment in the industry. We need to remain in compliance, right? And also, we need to make sure that we make right decisions with very informed decisions with right data. Okay, so in our case, basically, before we start thinking about technology and systems, what we did is, okay, we're gonna tackle this in three fronts. First, what are the business requirements? That will be key, right? Second, what data we need to make sure that we meet the business requirements. Third, which processes we need to make sure that we meet the business requirements, right? When we have all of that, we went through what probably a lot of people here is familiar with KDDs, which is key design decisions, right? And we spent 14 months doing that without any technology on the table. We went through the entire process and we identified where the data were going to be needed, right? And where the data was going to be captured and which data was the one that will be deployed for decision making at C-suite level, right? So we went backwards and we designed those collection points, in each of the processes, in each of the decision nodes, right? And then we basically workflow everything. And we ended up understanding that given the advancement in the technology about low code, no code, we were able to put workflows together. So no rocket science, data entry, transformation, data exit, right? So we went ahead and trying to identify in the market upper platforms to help us do this. This is before all this orchestration hype, right? Just to be honest, here, right? This orchestration didn't exist as a word as the trend, right? 3-4 years ago, right? So we did this before orchestration. It's conceived as a concept, one of the most powerful things today, right? We did this before those times, right? And then, we basically said if we can put together workflows in that way and we can map those critical data elements across the process for decision making, we can build our own internal procurement workflow. So basically, what we did is we started to, based on all this information, we have permission to build the first part of code, which is not even a code. Low code, no code is pieces of code that are already available for specific functionalities. So it's like a Lego set, right? So I need this piece, I need this piece, I need this piece. I put it together, it looks like a house. I need a house. Okay, that's what I needed, right? What data, what process, what policy, what people I need for that. That's already mapped. I'm just building on top of that, right? So that's what we did in terms of controlling the procurement workflow within the company. So we established our own process from intake to contract execution, the entire workflow and service validation. So we did it ourselves in the context of all these restrictions and pressures that we were getting from the industry and for the lack of resources at the moment to invest in the traditional approach for procurement tools.
It is amazing. First of all, I would like to repeat to everyone they took 14 months to develop, to map out the processes how you wanted it to be before any procurement tech on the table. I think a lot of people skip that step. It's in preparation to this session. I held over 30 interviews with CPOs, heads of procurement, etc., etc. And one of the very common instances was where the company realizes that they cannot continue without procurement function anymore, that it's a mess. They go out, they purchase, not implement, purchase a procurement system, and then they hire head of procurement. And that is always a very baffling scenario where most of the heads of procurement CPOs that I've spoken with, it is very hard to then build something that's going to work perfectly for that company, for their process, if they were not involved even in selecting the solution. But then the groundwork that you did in mapping all of that out, I think that's amazing. I think everyone should learn from that. So think it's great. And then, how was, if you could tell a little bit about the adoption? Because from what Pedro mentioned, if you build it within, the systems that your users are already using that might be easier? How was your experience?
Yeah, one of the main things that we were able to basically accommodate in the system that we built is a standard way of measuring progress for procurement, right? So basically, we used to have a procurement methodology, that expanded across all the categories. And the excuse is always that, well, we're different. There are specialties here. There are nuances that you don't understand. Our category, needs to follow this, and that. And then you get like a variety of processes that are very confusing for the internal stakeholders, right? So in terms of adoption, what we did basically is we're gonna measure procurement projects in the same way, no matter the category. There are gonna be specific nuances and workflows that will need to be dependent on certain category selection or type of services, right? That will be just organically built into that if we need to go that way. But in the way that we establish a methodology that is easy and to understand for everybody, right? We build a system to indicate the internal stakeholder where they are, what just happened, what is going to happen, how much time is going to take, who's in charge of what. So you have like a tracking system. They know what is next, right? So there's no like this silence or this, okay, I'm jumping to this system to this other system, right? They have a unique, standardized view of the progress of what the product and service they are requiring. So that enabled us to keep anxiety low, and then to really focus on what is the task of the day or what is next. What do I need from you? What do you need from me? Right. So everybody understand what's next. That helped us a lot in adoption. But also when we need to report back KPIs on procurement, we don't have like silos to say, well, yes, the non-technology categories, the savings, the time cycles, you name it, right? Now everything is consolidated. Then you can build, you can cut the cheese in the way that you want, but you're gonna get the same experience, the same data points, the same across. So we can really measure procurement function in a standardized way.
I think that's amazing and really, really great learning point on adoption. The way it should be done, the way you said, decrease anxiety,
Yep.
whatever that looks like for your organization specifically. Okay. And then I have next question, which I would like to ask to all of the speakers. So, reflecting on your journeys, which are again very diverse from everything you've told already, what do you believe to be the single most important step in successfully implementing procurement technology? So, Pedro or Ashish Gilberto, feel free to take that.
I think you already started to mention one of the key
Yeah,
factors in my view, which is this alignment between the strategy which you want to have and the purpose you need for a specific solution. So really that match between the business need and the technology which you want to select, right? And I'm pretty much think that in most cases this is kind of the critical factor which is going to make it really make it either succeed or it may make it actually fail. So not having a good understanding of what you need is really a gamble, right? And just giving you an example, which I recently saw, right? Just buying because of a packaged solution, a risk management and performance solution, and then putting it on the shelf because you have a missing business concept is not necessarily a value generation. So you first need to start really with understanding what is it you have in terms of objectives for a specific process, for a specific solution, and out of that derive your requirements, which you can then use for evaluating solutions and then implementing them as well with success, right? So for me, this is the most singular critical factor, having clarity on the strategy, which you have, but then as well the underlying business needs and the match up with the solutions which you have in place. And that means not just following a ERP strategy, which many companies do, right? They just follow what the big ERP strategy is actually telling us, right? But really be as well courageous enough and bold enough to say, no, we're actually looking at procurement enablement for the enterprise. Therefore, we need to really make it fit with our needs and priorities so that we can then satisfy everyone in the business with a proper procurement process and a good user experience, right?
absolutely love that perspective. Also, our lovely audience, please go ahead and put in the chat whether you agree, disagree, what is the most important step that you found. We have a very great discussion going on in the chat. And also, just to remind you, please submit your questions. There are already a few. So if you want it answered, please go ahead and do that. Ashish, what's your perspective? What's the single most important step?
Yeah, I think other than what I said about people, I echo what Pedro and Gilberto said about a thorough assessment of your needs. What are we trying to achieve? What are the gaps we are trying to fill in? What opportunities we have? Because in the past, and I'm sure if not all of us, most of us have experienced that we get so much excited about the technology that we first look for a solution and then try to define a problem. And then I use a word like we end up creating technology zombies, which nobody is using it.
Mm.
So it's very important that we should know what we want, and sometimes we may not need like the best solution, which is very relative. We need the right solution. So yeah, I would echo what's already being discussed. Yeah.
I agree. And Gilberto, do you have a different point of view?
It's gonna be difficult for this panel to not agree on this on this point. I will always say this. Um, Basically, your solution and what you're looking for should be dictated by your business requirements and needs, and not by the tech procurement industry offer. Okay, if you go and try to fish whatever fish and you then look at it if it works, right, and it's what I wanted to cook or not, right, you are probably using the wrong gear, right? You need to understand what you want to fish, right, and that will come from internal. Like, we need to be careful, right? It's like, okay, it's Black Friday, we need to buy something. Do you? Right? Do you really need to go and do that? We need to also understand that the procurement technology right now is bombarded with a lot of marketing and hype, right, on the different solutions that are just growing, that are just being tested, right? The scenarios that a lot of the companies are selling are scenarios, very theoretical scenarios that don't really reflect the reality of our businesses. So make sure that what you're looking for is based on your business requirement and is not based on 35 brochures that you got from a conference, right? From the different solutions. Stick to that. Careful with all this hype and pressure, and stick to your needs and to your turn of business. No, everybody's looking for the same thing. Ashish, Pedro, myself, we're looking probably for different things depending of our organizations, right? In my case, I'm looking right now for pace, stay in compliance, right? But be able to adapt to the changing environment, right? Especially with AI in the technology industry, right? And that's my challenge, and that's why I'm responding in the way that I'm responding. But again, industry agnostic. You need to make sure that your business requirements are clear and that you know what you need, and then you go and look and find and become a good client. That's probably the other advice, right? Given the work that we have to do on understanding every single step of the process, identifying process improvement opportunities, addressing them, adjusting the policy, adjusting the data, and then build technology or buy technology, because we also buy technology. I don't want just to give the impression that we'll build everything, right? We also buy technology. We become a good client, right? And this is something that I do also with other partners that I have, right? Even with procurement tech partners that I have, they ask me to go and do this reference call, right? And sometimes I come back to them and say, that client is not ready for you, right? And they keep on inviting me to the calls. I don't know why, but I understand that the clients are not ready for certain solutions. If you don't have a strong policy, if you don't have a strong process, right, no matter how good the tool is, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, I appreciate that you do that. It's a small remark from my side because, again, I work for Precoro, and so I've been a witness of a lot of different, let's say, sales calls, marketing calls, etc., etc. And one thing that made our team stand out to me is also the readiness to say that you are not prepared for the system yet. You are not ready. You don't have the processes in place. You don't have, you know, the right mindset yet, for example. And I think it's good. You shouldn't be collecting shelfware that you're not going to use, and that's going to be draining your budget from where you could actually use it to, you know, get ready for that system, or just get your processes in the right place. Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have so many more questions to you. I want to move forward to the next one, which is going to be addressed to Ashish. I think this is a very popular topic of discussion right now. So, the procurement tech landscape, we've it's been dominated by these big name solutions. And I appreciate Pedro not mentioning the name out loud. I caught you. But yeah, it's been dominated by huge ERP systems, et cetera, that just include the procurement module. And it's been very hot topic discussing whether we can move away from those systems. So there have been many best of breed solutions developing. They look nice, they have nice UX, but also are those solutions ready to accommodate the needs of companies that have been using these ERP systems that have everything in them? So, where do we stand in the tech market? Are we still holding on to the large players that might be suboptimal for some companies? Are we ready to move on to the new players?
I think this is my personal point of view. I think where we are probably more thinking about a hybrid model where it's the best of both worlds, where you are trying to leverage the scaled innovation of disruptors, plus you are using reliability of proven systems. So the underlying system is more, which has been proven in the past, but then you have set of microservices where a lot of innovation is coming, which is addressing your problems and gaps. And then on top of that, what Gilberto was talking, the buzzword, the orchestration, or if you are building a house, this is your front door. I think when we and I know it's a popular topic. It's about, I think it's about like really balancing optimism about the newer solutions and do a practical assessment. Are they really ready to replace the established players? Yes, they are. They are delivering much faster, much smarter. They are much more adaptable solutions tailored to the different client needs, but probably not all of them are like enterprise ready. They are providing like a lot of focused capabilities, absolutely much better than like one size fit all. So at this stage, I feel that it's more like not either or, more like a hybrid model. But who knows? I mean, the future may be completely different. Yeah.
It's all developing very fast. But indeed, and the same as Gilberto mentioned before, they built the system before the orchestration was such a popular concept, before it was coined. But now that that's available, and sort of conceptualizing about it becomes more and more popular, you could align the way a lot of enterprises do already, uh, to do
Yeah.
some plugins so that the UX for the end user looks nice, but then at the same time there is this huge beast in the background running all of those things at the same time. But then question is whether you need an ERP or you need an orchestration system. Is it just a collection of those best of breeds, or does it need the beast? What do you think?
Uh, I think probably we need both at this stage. We are learning.
Yeah.
We are trying to learn new things. We are trying to unlearn old things also. At this stage, again, orchestration. Yes, it is. It is getting very popular. It is becoming a buzzword also. I think it's too early to sort of decide whether we need this or that. Probably it's more about understanding and learning how this is happening, and then maybe in the future then it decides like, hey, maybe we don't need completely like ERP, because it's not just about uh, when we are like thinking about our technology, it's not just about like procurement itself. It's also about integrating with other functions also, like in supply chain. You want to have planning, you want to have quality also. So there are different aspects also which needs to be considered. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And then I have next question to Pedro, which is sort of comes out of this conversation. Um, there are so many procurement tech solutions on the market now. And I had a discussion with somebody just today saying that most of these differentiate only on marketing. So the only difference is the color of the system, not the system itself, not the functionality itself. I tend to disagree. But then, what's your perspective? How can people differentiate between all of this tech that is, again, widely available, but very different to cut through?
And it's a headache as well for many people, right? You have this
Yeah,
wealth of choices, right? There's big spider webs and hype curves, and you see
map.
all these sorts of solutions. And to be honest, on one side it helps because there's choice. On the other side, you have as well that confusion going on with the buyer, right? They need to kind of differentiate for themselves, right? And this is kind of an odd situation to be in. But I think we have this explosion now of solutions, which from my perspective, they come from the availability of technology and having a lot of smart people now really focusing on that particular domain, which is procurement, right? And for almost any niche problem, you'll have a solution with many competitors. What I think is important, this comes from the work I'm doing as well as startups. So I have a lot of companies coming up to me and kind of presenting their products. They want to have my perspective. They want to as well get my insights as to how well it actually is attuned to the niche, or how well it is attuned to the domain itself in procurement, right? And one thing which, a set of questions I usually go through. First one is, are they really solving a real problem? So is this really a business problem we're solving, or an opportunity which hasn't been tackled yet? So is there really a good value coming together with that solution as well? That's kind of the first thing I asked. The second one is exactly what you were just mentioning before. What's the differentiator? What is making you different from your competitors? And not having a good answer for that is usually an indication that there hasn't yet been a good thought through approach to their value proposition, right? So from my perspective, that is the second most important thing. Just really ask, how do you differentiate? What makes you different to A, B, C, or D, E, and F? And if it's something totally the innovative and which has never existed before, as well, kind of go into that value proposition perspective more in detail. The third thing I observe a lot is as well kind of how attuned these startups or companies are to the procurement domains, because there's many companies who have now understood there's a field of opportunity here, so they're joining from different other technology fields and want as well have some share of that market, right? And so one thing which I usually as well observe and test is, how much do they understand really the let's say the challenges in the procurement domain, how much do they speak the language, how well are their products actually positioned to really support procurement customers of different sizes or different industries with their solutions, right? And obviously, I mean, if you think a little bit about it, it's as well about how many reference customers they have, or first customers they have, which can kind of confirm that there is really a good play in that particular solution or with that startup. And not to forget the funding scheme as well, which these companies have, right? Quite an interesting one as well, which can be bootstrapped, which is not a bad thing. It's actually a choice of model, but it could as well be that they're getting founded where you want to as well learn how much investors are really committed to the success of that company. And just maybe a last point to add is from my perspective as well, that there is as well yeah, I think they're able to develop the market as well, right? So if we just talked about process orchestration before, there are some companies who've done an excellent topic in developing a market for a specific business problem which was not solved before, right? So seeing the ones who are driving these markets is a good indication as well that they're potentially going to be there for a bit longer. They're going to be staying committed to procurement, and they're not just going to jump again off into some other domain if it doesn't really work out for them. And with a good product roadmap, they really have a way forward as well, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I also thought of a fairly, it's not a hot take, but it's just logical in the context of our discussion. If you start your process from identifying what your pain points are and what you would like to solve, and then look for a solution that solves that specific problem, it's not even much of an issue to differentiate. What's your brand strategy, whether you have the latest innovation. It's about whether you do what I need done, and whether you can continue doing what we will, whether you can continue supporting our growing demands over the next years. So I think interesting. Just sharing my conclusions from our conversation. I think it's a very healthy perspective. And last but not least, something that Pedro started this discussion about, so many procurement tech companies being on the market with various different back-end systems, let's say, with different financial models. So some of them are backed by investors, some of them are bootstrapped. Um, and one of the big questions that has been on the market for a while now is, in about 2021, start of 2022, there was a big boom of investment into procurement tech. A lot of venture capital funds were investing into the field because, oh, we might have a recession. Companies will want to save money. What saves money? Procurement. There we go, procurement tech. And now, as we're nearing 2025, we are about to face, let's say, the first venture capital checks on their investments. So usually it takes about 2 to 3 years for them to consider whether this investment has paid off or will pay off, and then consider whether they're going to continue investing and keep that startup alive. So some people are speculating that we are on the verge of convergence through M&A, or that some of the startups might even cease to exist. So my next question is to Hilberto. What do you think, and I know it's a big question, what do you think is the future of procurement tech market? So are we converging? Is this just the next step to the boom in procurement tech? Where are we?
If we, as a potential clients of those solutions, don't do our due diligence, right, we're going to contribute for those companies to collapse and fail. There's not going to be renewals to those solutions because we're going to be lost after 1 year of testing, 1 year of trying. There's not going to be good results, and not because the tool maybe is not well structured or built, but I think it's because we haven't done our homework first. But taking the client's piece of my perspective from a client piece out of the game, I do believe that there's going to be synergies in the procurement tech industry where they will need to start looking at each other, right? And to try to really understand what is the best practice, what is the best approach from them, and trying to understand where the synergies are, right? Right now, there's going to be a window of opportunity of people underestimating what can be then overestimated, right? And there's going to be probably a little bit of hype on quick decisions around acquiring this and testing. Not every company has a procurement garage and have the luxury to go and spend millions of dollars just trying solutions, right? A lot of us, we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But I believe that yes, the size of the offer that we have today because of the AI and because of this venture capital injection over the past few years, um, it's going to disappear in the next 24 months. Like there's going to be a consolidation phase that without a doubt needs to come. And then the weak players will be out of the game. Again, because they will try to sell as much as they can, right, with a limited view of the value of proposition of the product, just because the technology is available, right? Nothing limit me from getting out of Thomson Reuters and go and sell my solution right now, right? Because I know how to build workflows. But that's not the technology is not the answer, right? So I do believe that yes, there's going to be a contraction in the offering in the next two years when all the business use cases for procurement are tested, validated, right? And then the only technology solutions that will remain in the industry are going to be the ones that are agile and flexible enough to adapt to the changing conditions, right? So that will be the challenge for the main players right now. And also, I think the ones that invest time with their clients and practitioners, the ones that decide to include practitioners in their teams, right? Not the ones that only have technology people building the solution and building a product, but the ones that invest time hearing from clients, hearing from customers, involve practitioners in their teams. They're the ones that are going to succeed as well.
Love that perspective. I think we need more procurement people in procurement tech companies. But
Yes,
hot take
100%.
might be a hot take. Okay. I think this has been a very insightful discussion. I didn't notice the time fly. We have quite a few questions in Q&A, so if you don't mind, we can transition to that. If we don't have the time to answer your question, we will follow up by email and answer that. So let me start. And there are quite a few questions about AI, which we also wanted to cover. So I think that's a great combination, let's say. So we have first question, how do you anticipate the change that will occur in procurement technology as a result of the advent of AI? Pedro, maybe you might want to take that with all of your experience with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, this is a very interesting conversation to have, right? And if you think about it, AI is one of the biggest game changes which we've seen lately, coming to the toolbox of technologies, right? And it's really opening up now the ability to rethink how you do actually structure your not just the user experience, but then as well your processes, your data, and then as well capacitate your people to work alongside. And there's this one key questions I have in my mind, with what we're currently seeing with regards to AI agents, autonomous sourcing, and procurement. Are we actually going to be changing the way we look at applications in the future, and the way we interact with applications in the future? And therefore, is it going to be less important about what we have in terms of modules in place, and much more important about how we orchestrate, just taking this word again, Gilberto, which you lended me earlier in the conversation, right? And how I interact with that in order to take the best value out of the data and the background modules which I have installed, right? So maybe for a user in
Yep.
the future, it could be less important to have a contract module or a sourcing module. It's more about the interaction with an AI agent, which could be reshaping the way we go about procurement technology somewhere down the road. It's not an immediate discussion, right? It's more about thinking about what is kind of that next generation of technologies potentially going to look like. By now, what we'll see is that there is infusion happening in current procurement technologies, where there is additional AI capabilities brought into spend, brought into requisition to pay, maybe with an agent as well, giving guidance, right? Or some of the sourcing systems as well, which are semi-autonomously doing activities with a human somewhere in the loop, right?
I love that. Gilberto, Ashish, do you have anything to add?
I think if I quickly add, uh, it will act as an enabler, at least in the near term. It will help in scaling innovation and much faster. It will help us to think some use cases which we have not thought of before. Uh, and other thing which I say, like, in the past, some of the solutions which, has been built in the market are around procurement. We call them procurement solutions. I think the future is more about business solutions, which are more like self-serving, which Pedro was also giving examples where it's more like self-serving and the procurement is focusing where they need to focus.
Mm,
So that will be a big game changer.
wow. Gilberto, do you have a
Yeah,
take? Yeah.
I want to build on that one because that's a really good point, right? And with real example right now. I'm sorry, Thomson Reuters has been developing a solution called Co-Counsel that is effectively for law firms, right? With this Gen AI applied to contract analysis, contract drafting, contract management, right? And just because of the design of the tool, right? There is a specific use case where all of us we interact with GCO, with legal counsels on a daily basis, right? Um, we in procurement are developing a specific LLM within that tool for a procurement case when this lawyer that is a specialized Gen AI agent is now putting the procurement hat on it, right? So they have all the power of the legal knowledge in the back from
Mm.
this product, but thinking as a lawyer that is supporting procurement day to day. So there is going to be AI developments on other industries and areas and departments within our companies that eventually will help us, to evolve in this journey as well. In our case, this is the case in contract drafting, analysis, comparison, and all of that, right? Having Gen AI to help us, make sure that we have contracts that are robust enough to move forward. Gen AI will surprise us with that. And I think one of the main cases that I am really looking for is um, and I'm not going to get into autonomous sourcing because it's a tricky topic that maybe we can spend, hours here, is really automated, autonomous. What is the difference between them, right? But yeah, I'm not gonna get there. But I think Gen AI will help us to have internal people facing procurement processes, systems, tools, and policies in a much better and frictionless way, right? I think that will be definitely something that I'm expecting to revolutionize the market in Gen AI, helping us to acquire products and services in a way that we have never before, experience wise, right? So I'm really looking for that, and I know Gen AI will be an accelerator to make sure that friction within the processes and compliance controls are going to be less in the future because of it.
Thank you so much for all of your perspectives. This has convinced me that AI is the future of procurement. Not that I needed much of convincing, but still. I want to say that we still have a lot of questions left, and we're going to address those later by email. I'm going to forward them to the speakers so that all of the questions get answered. But now I just want to thank you so much for coming today, for joining us. Thank you so much, Pedro, Hilberto, Ashish, for all of your expertise, everything you shared. I'm very passionate about the discussion. So we talked about everything about procurement tech, about the state of procurement tech market, about whether we're going to see some consolidation in the next 24 months, watch the market, and about all of these insightful stories that you've had within the market and how that's going to impact the future. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this has been useful to you. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did, and hope to see you the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye bye.
So,
Yeah, I